I'm one of two Royal Literary Fund fellows here at the University of Greenwich. I'll try and tell you a little bit about that, and maybe there'll be questions about that at the end. But I'm also a playwright, and as Cherry said, I spent 3 years working here with you guys on your academic writing. And I have this tiny little office in King William, and you come with your academic work, and I sit and read that with you, and just tell you what's happening in my head as we read things together. And I just got to this point, having been here more than 3 years now, that I've learned a few things about writing, and before I kind of head off, this is almost certainly my last year here at Greenwich, I just wanted to share some of those things that I've been thinking about. Because I feel like I've begun to understand some of the problems that we experience with academic writing, and also learned how to push people towards, or gently nudge people towards, the kind of practice of writing well. I'm going to begin rather kind of negatively with a sense of a problem. The Royal Literary Fund set up its fellowship programme in response to a problem, that students were arriving at university without the skills necessary to make the most of their education. So in a report in 2006 called Writing Matters, RLF fellows Nicholas Murray and Bill Curtin argued that large numbers of British undergraduates were struggling to express themselves adequately in writing. Why should we care? Well, good writing enables effective communication. It's important to say what we mean to say and to get that right. And good writing also facilitates effective thinking. We understand something better when we can put it in our own words. And good writing also enhances our confidence as students and academics, our ability to participate in the world of study. Without speaking the language of the world we're trying to work in, we'll only ever be flustered tourists getting lost and standing on the wrong side of the escalator. So the stakes are high. So what have I learned while I've been here? Well, lots. I'll get to that. Yes, there are technical problems to do with grammar and punctuation and spelling and all that kind of thing. But most of all, students come to my office terrified about what being academic means. We can't seem to shake off this idea that academic writing must be grand and difficult and verbose. But as a result of that attitude, our work becomes radically overcomplicated. In order to appear academic, students attempt to express simple things in labyrinthine ways. Sentences that go on forever, that change direction in the middle, sentences that repeat or contradict themselves, sentences that an academic reader is actually, ironically, paradoxically going to get lost in. We think that being academic means being enigmatic about the ideas we're trying to express. We can't believe that if we have something to say, we should just say it directly and precisely and concisely. We don't think we're just allowed to say what we mean. What do you think this means? It's not a real example of academic writing, but it's close to what we think academic writing might be all about. What do you think this means? We'll come to that. So, our idea of academic writing is actually, I kind of think, anxious writing. Our idea of academic writing is kind of intimidated by the idea of academic writing. It worries that simple things need to be expressed in complex, complicated ways. It doesn't have the confidence to say what it means precisely and concisely. And I just want to give you a different perspective and propose that good writing is clear, simple, concise, precise. But it's hard. It's actually really hard to get to that point. Often we don't have the confidence to find this sort of clarity. Just writing sentences can sometimes be a kind of nightmare. And then we receive feedback from our tutors who we've spent the last 3 weeks, or 8 weeks, or 8 years trying to second guess and trying to impress. And then they say, well, yeah, the writing's not quite academic enough. What do you mean? We say that it's not academic enough. I've made this writing as tedious and complicated and polysyllabic as I can. What do you mean it's not academic enough? What is academia actually for? What are we all doing here? What are we all doing this writing for? Because if there isn't a good answer for the reasons why we're trying to write in this way, then it's all just a silly, cliquey game, a kind of trap. Okay, I'm going to try and give you an answer, which is that all academic writing, one way or another, is just a way of making sense of the universe. The academy seeks to understand why things happen the way they did, and the way they do, and the way things might happen in the future. What caused the universe to form? What are the causal factors in Parkinson's disease? How can mindfulness help patients? Who was responsible for what was responsible for the rise of Nazi Germany? Why did Britain vote to leave the European Union? Why does this or that pattern of sound create such exquisite melody? Why did the economy crash in 2008? Will the economy crash again? How do we explain the rise of homegrown terrorism? Why is this arrangement of images in this poem so gut-wrenchingly moving? How can businesses motivate and inspire employees? What have been the consequences of European colonialism in Africa? What wiped out the dinosaurs? All these things people bring into my office, and it's fascinating. These are some of the extraordinary questions students are trying to ask every day. Now, the answers to all these questions may well be staggeringly complicated, intimidatingly complex, and so complex we may feel that we have no right to answer them. But all these things have one thing in common. All these things are simply about cause and effect. On one level, they're nothing more complicated than things doing things to other things. Actions having effects. We're never being asked to do anything more complicated than answering the question, how does this happen? And so we can always do something as simple as propose an answer, why this happened. A meteorite crashed into the earth. It could be argued that the war in Iraq radicalised young Britons. The Treaty of Versailles created resentment in Germany. As academic writers, all we're doing is getting to the heart of what does what to what. And to do that, and here I'm kind of getting to the point, our writing must be active. It expresses action, things doing things to other things. And I'm going to try and explain this by looking at something from my field, from the field of playwriting. And in the field of playwriting, there's a technique called actioning, which we use with actors. Now, to take a step back, drama is all about action. It's about people loving other people, protecting other people, inspiring people, people attacking people, caressing people, killing people. What do you notice about all these words?
They're all verbs.
They're all verbs. They're all verbs. And verbs are so important. And in this technique of actioning, and here are some images to follow from some of my own plays, what we do is we tell the actor to apply a verb to what they're doing to the other person. So, what do you think the king is doing to the earl here? What him? What is he doing? Give us a verb, put a verb in there. The king, the earl. Any thoughts?
Easy.
One at a time, sorry. We all said something once there. Go for it.
Holding.
The king holds the earl. Lovely. Okay, so that that indicates something beautifully physical and also suggests something about supporting him. There's a kindness in that verb to hold. Any other ideas of what the king might be doing to the earl? And there are no right answers, or wrong answers anyway. What else could the king be doing?
Consoling.
The king consoles the earl. Isn't that a beautiful verb? And a very precise action that the king is doing. So what is happening in this scene? The king consoles the earl, or the king holds the earl. Right, let's practice this with another image. He's called Richard. What is Richard doing to Henry here?
Grasping.
Richard grasps Henry. Okay, great. What else could he be doing?
Protecting.
Richard kills Henry. Okay, so something entirely different. Richard protects Henry, yeah? So 3 beautifully different actions of things that are happening in this scene, in this play. And what's really important is that we have somebody doing something to somebody else. Okay? Something doing something to something. Let's look at one last one. Sorry, it's a bit more pixelated, this picture. What do you think Karen is doing to Roxana? She is showing. So Karen shows Roxana. Yeah? Now, that's okay. That's okay. Karen is showing something to Roxana, but the verb to show doesn't quite... It kind of charges Karen, but it doesn't really do much to Roxana. It doesn't engage, it doesn't tell a story about what Roxana is doing. We could say that Karen fascinates, or captivates, or enthralls Roxana. And both of these things, something doing something to something, gives a sense of the dynamic relationship between one thing and another. Now, why am I banging on about my plays? Because it seems to me that this is a kind of good model for the most simple and important thing that I know about grammar, and I know very little about grammar, despite having been here for 3.5 years, and that is this structure: subject, verb, object. And some of us will have come across this, and maybe some of us won't. But for me, it's the thing that I talk about almost every time I see a student. Subject, verb, object. Karen captivates Roxana. The subject of the sentence is the thing that does the doing. Okay, in that case, Karen. Right? I'll show you her again. Karen is doing the doing. The verb, we know what the verb is, so we can say captivate. The object, so the verb is what is done. The object, the thing that is done to. Okay? Karen, so in this case it's Roxana. Karen captivates Roxana. Dad eats cheese. She teased me. It's simple, but I just find it so important in ways that I hope to show you. One of the things that's also worth noticing is the process that we just went through of innovating that action, testing out different verbs, what works best, what's right for what's really happened, what's the truth of this situation between Karen and Roxana. So, when a student comes to me with a piece of writing, we read it, and sometimes it seems to us that we're just staring into the ether, we're just staring into the darkness when we look at a sentence, okay? And we might take a sentence like this, which you might look at it and feel like you're staring into the darkness. And what I often ask is, having sort of tried to explain what subject-verb-object is, so what do you think the subject is? Who is doing what to what in this sentence? Any ideas? What is the subject of this sentence, do you think? The cat, yes? It's quite cunningly disguised, but it's the feline animal referred to in this sentence, yeah? The cat is the subject of the sentence, the feline animal. And what is the verb? The lowering of the hind portion, or we might say sat, yeah? And what is the object? The mat, yeah. So what we do when we pay attention to subject-verb-object is we come to radically to kind of cut the crap with what we're writing. Yeah? Yeah? The cat sat on the mat. All right? So we identify what the subject is, and we think, well, very often what we find is that the subject of a sentence is hidden right at the end of a sentence that we're trying to write, yeah? And it's almost like students try and disguise the simplicity of the cat sat on the mat, or the subject, the verb, and the object. So very often the subject is kind of hidden at the end of a sentence, and the verb is completely disguised, and the object comes first. Right. So what we've been doing here is redrafting. And we might have this idea that redrafting is a laborious and mysterious process. And we might stare at an essay taunting us on the screen, and because we're tired, we're berating ourselves because we know it's not good enough yet, and we know it's too long, and we don't get it, and that we've been lying to ourselves about this thing, and this thing which, and frankly, we're no good, and we'll never be able to do it. And the first thing I'd say to you is, don't worry, it's not about you. And it might come as some relief in a way if we accept what Ernest Hemingway said about the first draft of anything. Okay? Of course the first draft isn't there yet. That's okay, because all good writing goes through many drafts. 10 drafts of the play and I'm still not getting it right, and I'm really hating myself about it, but it is part of the process. In drama, in a redraft, I'll go back to the characters. I'll go back to the action, though. I'm not looking at how pretty the sentences are. I'm going back to the action. What are they doing to each other? What if I change the action? What if the king soothes the earl rather than berates him? Similarly, in an essay, we can go back to each sentence and ask, what is doing what to what in each sentence? So, for example, when thinking about some of the things I wanted to say to you today, I came across some of these statements. And these are probably kind of okay as they stand. But I thought, no, I'm not quite happy. In this case, I've decided to experiment with the subject, verb and object. What if, for example, I decide to abandon the abstract subject, good writing, and make the subject more concrete, good writers? And that makes it easier for me to make the verbs kind of stronger. So instead of using the verb to be and to have, which feel kind of passive, what if I directly use those verbs? Good writers choose, eliminate, clarify, use, not that happy with use, redraft. Yeah? So asking me to think about subject, verb and object actually focused my mind to make my writing maybe a bit more active. Now, maybe you like the first draft of what I wrote more, that's fine. Academic writing is a journey. Sometimes you make false steps and you have to retrace, but almost always you're going one step back and 2 steps forward. So far, we've been primarily thinking about sentences. We've been thinking about words and dense paragraphs and all that kind of thing. And we talked a bit about how that kind of writing can go wrong. But the sad fact is that there's another problem and another anxious myth sewn into the sinews of all our worries about writing. And this is just as important as poor sentences and just as painful sometimes. And that is the myth that the essay question that you have been asked, or the thesis title that you have chosen, is a riddle that cannot be answered directly, and that therefore the whole of your essay or thesis, its shape, its ideas, its argument, must emerge through a kind of miraculous conception that can only occur after 3 or 8 weeks or years of panicked research and late-night crisis. How does this nightmare tend to work? Well, first of all, we receive a question, or you devise your own question. And because we don't want to spend too long thinking about it, because we don't want to question our question too much, because we're desperate to just start, we go into the woods. Yeah? we decide to embark on a long and dangerous journey. We immediately go into the library, read as much as we can, everything, unfiltered, everything, taking down everything, we write everything down, we try and remember everything, we try and cram everything into our heads. We go into the woods, gathering more and more good points, things that we think our supervisor will like, going off in one useful or not so useful direction, getting more and more lost. We gather ideas, pet ideas that we really want to go in, things your supervisor has mentioned, things you think they want to hear. And we think, because it's all still in the back of our head, we think we can make it all work. We sort of in the back of our head, we can introduce these intangible connections and links between things. In our heads, these associations are useful. And because we want to use all these brilliant ideas we've discovered, and we hate the idea of not using them, we decide to start writing and see if we can make it all work in the end. When we sort of find ourselves with all these pet ideas that we want to get in, it's kind of, what ends up is like a kind of hopelessly erected tent, and I've got another pet tent for you there that I wanted to show you. And eventually we find ourselves in this situation, this terrible situation where this sense of this is just impossible. And it's this moment that we need to start. And I think, anyway, for some people their brains don't work like that and everything works fine and you can just visualize everything. But for most students who come and see me, the thing I understand most is that you need, well, it would really help if you thought about planning a little bit beforehand. So it's time to take responsibility for answering the question clearly and simply, because very often good writing is planned. But the first thing we have to do before that is look again at the question. So all forms of writing in one way or another begin with a question. Yeah? Films, novels, plays begin with a question, a problem that must be solved. Who's committed the murder? Will our hero or heroine save the world? Will the guy or girl get the guy or girl? Will they get out of the evil house alive? And as these stories unfold, we at least unconsciously get a sense of pleasure and satisfaction and thrill and terror as the story relentlessly answers the question. Will those two ever get together? Can our heroes possibly save the world from a monster as terrifying as this? And you may be aware of this sensation, being in a film, say, becoming aware of a feeling of frustration because the story has, for one reason or another, stopped answering the question. It's gone off the rails, and we've stopped caring about the story. The story has started answering a different question, but all we care about is the question that was asked at the beginning. Is the hero or heroine going to get out of the nightmare house alive? I don't give a damn about their financial problems. I don't care about their love life in Vancouver. All I care about right now is about whether the monster is going to eat them up. I think being an academic reader, reading an essay, is sometimes a little bit similar. Yeah? You're reading 40 of these essays, and when an essay stops answering the question you've asked, you know it, and you know it fast. So, let's take a question like what caused the 2008 financial crisis, or what wiped out the dinosaurs, or the question I promised to address for you today, what is good writing? What am I going to do with this? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is really look hard at it, okay? Underline the key terms. Really try and get a sense of what it is I'm trying to do, what it is I'm being asked to do. Really look at this question, size it up. Let it run around my brain for a little while. Take a walk. What's this question asking me to do? I start to take the view that all I need to do is answer this question, what is good writing? Good writing is concise. Bang. Good writing is concise. Bang. Good writing is clear. And if your essay seems to be answering the question, then the reader will sit there going, bing, bing, yes, 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 yes. A good essay for an academic reader, the experience of it is a bit like a number of lights just going off in their head, one after the other. Bing, 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 bing. The experience should be that effortless, and it can be sometimes. And then essays become a pleasure to read. So this was a kind of very first rough draft of this lecture, and you can see how messy and stupid it is. You'll notice for each main section I've written a sentence that kind of summarises one essential simple direction that the paragraph will take. So I've got this idea that I wanted to talk about that there's a crisis with student writing, and that student writing can be throttled by anxiety about being academic. And also that I wanted to talk about a technique called actioning from playwriting, which is about finding action in every line of dialogue. But you'll also kind of notice how obsessed I am with talking about me being a playwright in this draft of the plan, or a Hollywood screenwriter or whatever. And it seemed also to me that there was a kind of, I was trying to tell a story about a thematic struggle between dead writing and active, alive writing. And I kind of became a bit dissatisfied with this story that I wanted to tell you. So I redrafted the plan, and I cut out some of my pet ideas. And it wasn't too heartbreaking. And I got onto something slightly less narcissistic. And in this version of the plan, I've decided to organise by topic rather than theme. So good writing is well structured. Another topic is the importance of planning. And this structure began to work a lot better for me. As good writing answers the question, the importance of planning. Good writing is clear, concise and precise. Good writing uses active language and an active structure. Good writing embraces redrafting. So I felt better at that point, having taken responsibility for organising, then reorganising this information. Now, you'll probably notice that the points up here aren't quite perfect, but I'm feeling a lot better about what I'm doing now. And you notice that I've articulated my plan in sentences, not one-word headings. Now these are called topic sentences, and you could have a topic sentence for each paragraph, and that paragraph will be defined by that topic sentence. So each paragraph will only be about that topic sentence. And that way we won't begin to experience as a reader that frustrating sense that the writing has gone off the rails. See, topic sentences are like signposts. They reassure the reader that you're on the right track, and they also help you stay on track. And once you have these topic sentences, you know where the piece is going, you know what you're going to do. And so finally, my kind of third redraft of this lecture, it kind of became clear to me that this presentation was mainly about two things. Firstly, in answer to the question, what is good academic writing? And firstly, good academic writing is about creating, constructing, formulating clear, simple, precise sentences that express the action of the universe of these academic writers. What is doing what to what seems really important to me today. And secondly, that good academic writers answer the question and laser guide their response with an effective plan. Now, today I'm happy with that structure. If I ever do this presentation again, I'll probably jiggle it around. But writing well is a marathon. It's a habit or a practice. I'm kind of mixing metaphors here. An exercise. It's something we keep working on. It's something we keep working on all our lives. And sometimes writing seems impossible. Sometimes for me writing seems impossible. And it's very hard sometimes and sometimes that's because the universe we're writing about is complicated and contradictory. And sometimes it's because we're paralysed by a sense of what we're supposed to be doing. And that's not what we should be doing, I don't think. Because at heart, writing is just trying to get to the bottom of how things, certainly academic writing is just trying to get to the bottom of how things, our solar system, our laws of nature, our fellow creatures, our systems, our cultures, our hearts work. Writing is nothing more mysterious than that. I'm going to end it there. Thank you very much.